Hey guys, welcome to Pub Talk. This is a new series I'm going to try out where I take a bunch of record footage that I do when playing pubs and talk about a current issue within the Battlefield 3 franchise. And for the first episode, I'm going to try to talk about a subject that was brought up by Flytch in the reddit.com's Battlefield 3 subforum, where he wrote, "Is DICE approaching assignments the wrong way?" He goes on to ask, has anyone else noticed that all the new assignments tend to be along the lines of use this equipment that nobody uses to unlock a new recycled camouflage? People don't use the mortar UD bot because they are completely useless. Perhaps instead of forcing players to use them, DICE could actually fix what is wrong with this equipment instead. Assignments shouldn't be tedious chores that unlock nothing of particular value. They should be fun. Now, I want to talk about this subject because I think it's a very interesting thing to talk about. Assignments more generally and what they should and shouldn't be asking you to do as a player, as well as what should be unlocked when you do accomplish those goals. But before I go into the assignments question, I want to sort of ask a more general question. What is the point of playing Battlefield? Well, for some people it may be to win a game. For others, maybe just to kill dudes. For others, maybe get that really cool kill streak. But you can summarize all these different types of activities as trying to have an enjoyable experience. And I think back before we saw the assignment systems first implemented back in sort of the beginning of Battlefield 2, what were the things that you did in Battlefield that made it an enjoyable experience? Well, kill dudes, that makes sense. Be in the other team by playing the objective, although back in the day it was mostly Conquest and TDM and Capture the Flag going way back. Or just immersing yourself in the Battlefield game itself, either being a sniper or a recon, maybe driving a Jeep around, or even doing stunts. There was a portion of the population, then and now, that do nothing but do stunts because they like that sandbox experience. It's about having that enjoyable experience. And when Battlefield 2 and subsequent Battlefield titles began to introduce sort of the meta concept of assignments, be it perk unlocks, or medals, or ribbons, or whatever it may be, it attempted to expand the scope of the enjoyable experience by offering a variety of new ways for players, both super serious and casual, to play the game empowered by the in-game statistics. I mean, how does that actually work? Well, there are some players who are simply more casual than others. Those who could only play Battlefield for only an hour or two a week at best, and may not be proficient in every aspect of the game. There may be players that are in this category that have negative experiences online playing multiplayer because they may not be as well versed in the Battlefield game. Or they may play a map against opponents who are simply more proficient. Let's face it. Sometimes you just want to get into a server and blow off steam. Sometimes you just want to you want to play in the sandbox. You just want to shoot some dudes. You don't want to think about necessarily playing the objective and being super serious about it. And in previous games before assignments, you were very limited in terms of that. And there was a whole lot more negative things going on than positive in that respect. Assignments are one way to make the multiplayer experience more enjoyable for a larger audience. It allows players of all skill sets to complete simple and achievable objectives and get rewarded for them with either an unlock that is material in the game or one that's not material, a dog tag or a ribbon or a medal or some other trophy that recognizes a given achievement. While there are unlocks that can have significant impact of the game, most of them in Battlefield 3 are entry-level in nature so that even players who only play a few hours a week can achieve them without a significant time constraint. Now, tying individual assignments, particularly those that are the most basic in nature, to relatively easy goals, continually reinforces and incentivizes what should be fun and enjoyable play. Sure, the assignments become more difficult for players that get through the first few tiers of unlocks, but in this same respect, there is an expectation that players who seek out these unlocks will have a higher proficiency in the game and thus can handle either a more difficult task, like get a bunch of headshots, or alternatively a larger volume of tasks needed to accomplish the objective, such as get 200 kills or something around those lines. In the end, though, assignments are not about getting medals or ribbons or unlocks. They're about having an enjoyable experience. Or to put another way, having fun. Right now, there are a number of assignments that simply aren't that fun, such as My Own Terminator from Close Quarters requiring an EOD bot kill, or Let It Rain from Batakarkin requiring 2 more kills. Now, don't get me wrong. These are a handful of assignments that really aren't a big deal because it only requires getting a few kills here and there, but people still find them tedious in nature. One could argue that this may be DICE simply trying to get people out of their comfort zones to play underused tools and weapons, but even if this were true, even if DICE had such altruistic goals in saying there are certain classes, there are certain weapons and certain tools that are underutilized and we want to encourage people to use them, tying an assignment to them will not necessarily make them more utilized and make people want to use them even after the assignment is accomplished, because it's still not fun to use. In this respect, this is much more indicative of how these tools and weapons lack real viability. People don't use mortars or EOD bots because they have some philosophical issue with indirect fire or unmanned drones. They don't use them because they're not good to use in-game. They're not effective. There are better options out there than to use those 2 tools and weapons. And notice how I use the word viable and not balanced. Clearly, there are opportunity costs that we have to weigh whenever we choose a repair tool versus an anti-tank mine versus an EOD bot. But clearly, within that construct, there are a variety of options in which repair tool is a better choice, and there are a variety of situations where an anti-tank mine may be better. And it doesn't have to mean that the 2-3 systems that you have to choose from are on equal footing. There are certain maps, certain game modes, and certain conditions in terms of number of players where you may need to go anti-tank mine versus repair tool. But there are very few scenarios where EOD bot actually is a viable alternative relative to the other 2 options. And because of that, it's underutilized. The same thing goes with a system like the mortars. Mortars should be effective, but there are only a very limited scope of circumstances in which it actually has some opportunity. And until the opportunity costs are in place to use it versus the other weapon systems available, in this case the C4 and the Claymores, then people are going to continue to not utilize mortar. How would we change this, though? Well, we can change it in a few different ways. We can both sort of have a negative opportunity cost created or a positive opportunity cost created. What do I mean by this? Well, a negative opportunity cost would clearly be one that we saw within the most recent update of the canister shot with the main battle tank. The canister shot was nerfed. It was tied to the rate of fire of the main battle tank's main gun, and so you can only fire one or the other at any given time, whereas in pre-patch you could fire your main gun, your canister shot independent of one another. Because of that change in impact, which is clearly a negative impact on canister shot, a nerf, it actually makes the other perks, HMG, LMG, guided, more viable. And because of that, it allows people to be a little bit more diversified in terms of what they can choose from. Now it's no longer go canister shot no matter what. Another way you could do it would be a positive impact, where you say, okay, well maybe we take an EOD bot and we say, well, the EOD bot has it's a bomb disposal unit, but they have EOD bots in real life that have an M240 on them. So maybe put an M240 on it. Or maybe put some grenades, like a little grenade launcher. Something around those lines that make it more viable to use in a variety of situations. Can you only imagine going around lockers on Metro and seeing a little EOD bot with an M240 just shooting that spray of fire and just being scared as can be as this little EOD bot with a machine gun turns that corner? That'd be really cool. And that'd be one of many ways that you could have a positive impact, where that the engineer can now say to himself, wow, Do I really want to go repair tool or mines? Or, man, I could really go ED bot and do some damage. And the similar thing could be done for mortar as well. In the end, it's about viability. Now, there are certain game modes and certain maps and certain number of players that are clearly more positive than others. And so this isn't a question of making it egalitarian by saying, well, since 70% of the gameplay out there is on, making up numbers here, on Metro, then we need to curtail it all to around Metro. No, that isn't necessarily the case. We have night vision unlocks for all the main guns, but there's only a few maps in which it even has a certain amount of viability. And that doesn't mean that we somehow need to make it super powerful on those two maps, but we have to make it viable for the maps that it's on. Those are the kind of questions that we have to sort of ask ourselves in regards to the question of balancing more generally. And again, it's making things viable. We want players to look at all the unlocks they have, look at all the opportunity they have for all 4 classes and say, if I go support, I will be viable for my team. I'll be able to get those kills. I'll be able to destroy those buildings, arm an MCOM, provide cover, whatever it may be. We want players to have the ability to point to any given class or any given weapon and make the choice and say, hey, if I go recon, there is a weapons loadout that will work best for me to help me aid the team in this particular map and game mode and circumstance that I'm playing in. Now, this doesn't mean that advocacy or incentivization of doing certain things shouldn't be pursued by DICE. In fact, DICE could do the same thing they're doing with the assignments right now in terms of incentivizing to play certain weapons or classes or tools and do it for certain types of game modes, such as tank superiority or squad rush or even squad deathmatch. Or they could perhaps create a new series of assignments for competitive play, such as playing on the new matches feature that we see on Battlelog. These kind of incentivizations are viable if, of course, those types of game modes are actually fun to play. And I'll tell you, at least in the competitive side, they actually are fun to play. And when you tie those types of assignment with a medal or with an unlock, with playing a game mode that people may not play, to make them sort of move outside their own element, it may create a more enjoyable experience for these players when they find that they actually enjoy playing a new game mode they've never experienced before, or a competitive format they've never touched before. That should be the objective with the assignments. Keeping it fun. Keeping the game enjoyable and unique and interesting and engaging. And hopefully, as DICE continues to create new assignments, that we'll continue to see this progression in a positive and constructive manner. I think that's all I'm going to do for this episode. So, Flytch, great question. And it wasn't directed to me. I'm just answering this independent, so this is not as if this is some kind of thing where I'm getting a bunch of questions from people. This is just me doing commentary. So I hope you enjoyed the pub footage, and I'll do this a few other times in the next few months, and we'll see how it goes. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you later.